Good guys, Hell on Wheels here. Would you guys like to have your coffee with a side of bullshit today? Um, so I was sent this by Jason Hammond, who wanted my perspective on this bullshit right here, which I'm gonna read to you. Now, in case some of you guys don't know, I am very, very outspoken about disability issues, and I have been looking into some things with some major disability activist organizations. I have another tab that we're going to look at briefly oh, right after I finish this. But these are the Agenda 2030 goals for people like me. Because don't you know, the UN, the eugenicists, really, really care about people with disabilities? I feel morally safer knowing that they have goals just for me. 'Cause I'm special. I'm special needs. Alright, so in September of 2015, the General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals, building on the principle of leaving no one behind. The new agenda emphasizes a holistic approach for achieving sustainable development. All I can think of is the No Child Left Behind Act, which made everyone here in the US of A just a tiny bit dumber. So there's that. The Sustainable Development Goals also explicitly include disability and people with disabilities. I'm not going to say persons because it sounds stupid. 11 times. Disability is referenced in multiple parts of the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically in the parts related to education, growth, and employment inequality, accessibility of human settlements, as well as data and monitoring of Sustainable Development Goals. So on the surface, some of this stuff sounds really good, right? We do have issues with fair employment. We have issues with access to housing and, just general community access. So these things are all true. These are things that we deal with on a daily basis. And we also deal with more issues with poverty, domestic violence, and just about any other, issues that you could think of that would come along with that. But I just want to point this out to disabled people that might watch this. I'm not against disability rights activism in principle. What I am against is the way that disability activism is being used against the people that it's supposed to help. So I'm gonna get into that in a minute though. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Um let's see. So data collection thing. Data collection and the monitoring of sustainable development goals. If you don't know, one of the big things with Agenda 2030 is the movement of people into these smart cities, which I think is probably going to need a video of its own. But basically, the idea with a smart city is to have it connected to AI and, big tech and all this stuff where everything that you do is going to be monitored. You're going to be monitored inside your house. You're going to be monitored outside your house. Your Bill Gates toilet is going to know how much your shit weighed this morning. They're going to know exactly how much electricity you're using. If you've already had your meat rations for the year, stuff like that. So the monitoring thing, maybe I'm reading too far into it, but when I think of monitoring the Sustainable Development Goals, that's what I think of. And what you're going to notice if you start looking into Agenda 2030 and things like that is that language is very important. Like, you'll see the word sustainable development a lot. You're now seeing it with the word reimagine quite a bit more often since the whole scamdemic thing started this year. So just remember, as we go through some Agenda 2030 stuff at points in this channel, how important the language that they use to describe this is. It's not an accident that they talk this much about monitoring sustainable development goals, because it's all going to be monitoring. Although the word disability is not cited directly in all goals, the goals are indeed relevant to ensure the inclusion and development of people with disabilities. The newly implemented Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development holds a deep promise for persons with disabilities everywhere. The year 2016 marks the first year of the implementation of goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. At this critical point, Envision 2030 will work to promote the mainstreaming of disability and the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. So again, I'm not here to downplay the the lesser access to education, employment, community resources and stuff like that. I know I've been disabled my whole life and I have experienced I have experienced the inequality myself. So this is not me trying to downplay the inequality that I've faced with and I know a lot of other people have been faced with. Which is another thing, while I'm thinking about it, another thing I want to say to disabled people is that I understand why you're angry about the way that we've been treated. This is a eugenicist system, which is something that they tell you a lot, which is true. This is one of those nuggets of truth that exist within the Marxist disability activism, is that it is a eugenicist system, and you're gonna see that. But this is one of the big lies right here. Is one of the big lies that they're telling the disabled people, is that this Agenda 2030 goal is for the inclusion of disabled people in society, and the word equality is an interesting one as well. Equality, inclusion. Because, as some of you know, the big part of Agenda 2030 is to make it so that everybody is equal in wealth. Meaning that the 99% or the 99.9% or whatever metric you measure them by, most of us are going to be all poor, and eventually it's going to get to the point where if any disabled people are left alive at all, um, the able-bodied people are you are going to see the poverty that we've seen. It's already been talked about. A lot of people in disability activist circles have been talking about how, um, how ridiculous, how everybody's saying it's ridiculous that the able-bodied people get to complain about $600 a month when we only live on $700 a month, those who are on benefits, which is true, and it's a fair point, but it's the whole attitude problem with disabled people, which I'm gonna kind of get into in a minute, but I should really get moving on this. Also, this is gonna sound like me being terrible, but have you noticed this little phrase here? Oh, I'm sorry. The mainstreaming of disability. Now, when I say something about the mainstreaming of disability, what I'm not saying is that we shouldn't get to participate in society. We should. we should have access to the same resources. We should have access to the same like mainstream community things and stuff like that. So when I'm talking about the issue that comes along with mainstreaming disability, I'm not saying it's an issue. It's like an issue of we shouldn't be involved in mainstream society because that's not true. But I also feel like, and maybe I'm reading too far into this, and you guys can tell me if I am. With the mainstreaming of disability, they're basically trying to make it more normal to be disabled, so that like when you get your vaccine injury from this vaccine that's been rushed out in less than a year, or you start getting all screwed up because of the 5G or anything else like that, you start to think, like, okay, well, it's fine. It's totally like, disability is normal, and I just gotta accept the fact that I was injured by whatever poisons they're pumping into us in whatever way, and that's all fine and good. And so I feel like on some level they're gonna use the idea of normalizing and being tolerant of people with disabilities to just get you used to the idea that, hey, if you become disabled due to our bullshit, then it's 100% fine. Again, I have nothing against di- disabled people or disability being mainstreamed or even seen as a bit more normal, but I think I could just see how, with the way that they're gonna push this, they're gonna make it like they want us to be probably more disabled than not by the end of all this. I mean, they want most of us dead, but they want us all more disabled than not. Because, if you have like a small population of like semi-disabled people, then maybe they don't fight back as much. But I don't know, I could be wrong about that. I do think that there's definitely eugenicist undertones though. Like maybe they don't want a bunch of people becoming disabled, or or at least they don't want as many people becoming disabled as I think they want. Cuz like, over the next 10 years, actually this is probably what it is. Over the next 10 years, they probably want to make as many people sick and disabled as possible and then kill them off. But I don't know. A lot of speculation here. But I do think that there's something a little off about the fact that the UN of all people, the most eugenicist people this side of Bill Gates, are talking about mainstreaming disability. For whatever reason, that just doesn't sit right with me, and maybe that's something I need to look into and discuss more later on. Okay, so throughout its 15-year lifespan, with objectives to raise awareness of the 2030 Agenda and the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals for. Oh, okay. So I should just reread that. At this critical point, Envision 2030 will work to promote the mainstreaming of disability and the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. Throughout its 15-year lifespan, the objectives will be to raise awareness of the 2030 Agenda and the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals for persons with disabilities, promote an active dialogue amongst stakeholders on the Sustainable Development Goal with the world with a view to create a better world for people with disabilities, and establish an ongoing live web resource for oh establish an ongoing live web resource on each sustainable development goal and disability. Okay, here's my question. Now, it's no secret that a lot of the people who hold most of the money and power, and a lot of the people that they would be talking to about this little agenda of theirs, are eugenicists, right? What I don't know about you, but I don't feel particularly safe having a eugenicist tell me or be designing the world on my behalf. Because I'm pretty sure the only thing a eugenicist would do is to just do what the eugenicists have been doing now. Make it so hard to live as a person with disabilities that you almost feel like you'd be better off dead. Which I'm not saying that particularly feel that way, but there are a lot of there are a lot of people with disabilities who are just absolutely miserable, and they have the right to be because we have been kept deliberately poor. We have been, struggling to get proper access to healthcare and equipment and stuff like that. So, I totally understand why so many of us are angry. But this is kind of going to get into the next thing that I have to show you here. What you're looking at is the Not Your Inspiration project. I am going to be careful and not play this video, but I'm going to read this article for you. And everything that I um, used in this video is gonna be in the description below. So this, if you don't know, is one of the biggest disability activists groups that's out there. And this is gonna be kind of an example of what I mean when I say that Marxists are using disabled people to push their agendas. Disabled people are not your inspiration. I use the term porn deliberately because they objectify one group of people for the benefit of another group of people. In this case, we're objectifying disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people. Now, this is another thing. This inspiration porn thing. I do believe that inspiration porn is a problem on some level. Like, you shouldn't really be you shouldn't really watch a video on the internet of somebody who you think might have a similar diagnosis to your friend and then badger your friend about why they don't try harder to get out of their wheelchair or something like that because you saw somebody else in a wheelchair walk. So, I could get behind that there is inspiration porn and people do hold disabled people to unrealistic standards when it comes to what they think a disabled person should be able to do because they see these like well curated videos that are meant to pull on the heartstrings. So that I understand. And in general, disabled people are held to a standard and there is ableism and stigma and stuff. So, I kind of understand the concept, although the way the way that they are about it is very different. Like I wouldn't say that I'm not, you know, an inspiration. I could be to somebody. I I don't see anything wrong with people thinking I'm an inspiration. If there is something that I say or do that helps you get through your day or whatever, then that's great. I'm not gonna look down on somebody because they find my attitude and the way I handle my disability inspiring. So I think we need to be careful with, the way that we handle being somebody's inspiration. It depends on the context. Okay. So here's this part. It's time to stop exploiting disabled people and start working together to imagine disability liberation and bring it into existence. I want to scoot my motorized wheelchair around in a world where a disabled person learning to drive a car or plant a garden or play guitar on their own is no different than any other person tackling any other challenge, not clickbait, used to increase shareholder process profits. Again, this is kind of a thing that I could get behind a little bit, although I think it's important that we should acknowledge that for some of us with disabilities, things like driving are going to be harder. Like, I know that I had to go through a much more long and painful process to get my driver's license than my able-bodied brothers did, or my mom or my dad did. So I think it is important that we acknowledge that these things take extra work. Although I kind of get what you're saying about how they shouldn't be just used as clickbait videos to get someone Reddit karma or somebody profits or whatever. So I can understand that to a certain degree. Alright. Bad news for me though, that's not the way it works here in the land of late stage US capitalism. Yes, the late stage capitalism thing, the whole narrative that capitalism is dying, and it's not at all been controlled demolition by the elite. It's just that, oh, it just doesn't work. Giving people freedom doesn't work. I'm gonna skip this part. Um, it's just about that Forrest Gump scene, which, okay, Forrest Gump running out of his braces is kind of ridiculous, and maybe you could make an argument that that's ableist, but you know, it was the fucking 80s, and that movie's a classic. I mean, I certainly didn't take any offense to the guy running out of his braces. It's a freaking movie. Relax. Wow, how inspiring. If I tried hard enough I could learn to walk in no time. OMG, that would totally be like beating the last boss at the end of a game. Okay, so this is a point that I would touch on is you know, it's good to set goals for yourself when you are a disabled person, but we shouldn't set unrealistic goals. Like, you know, I set a goal to use my manual chair a little bit more for exercise and not depend completely on the electric. That's a reasonable goal for me. But a non reasonable goal for me would be to expect myself to ever be out of a wheelchair. And that's fine. I recognize that the wheelchair is part of my life. It comes with some stigma and some bullshit, but that's just that a wheelchair is my key to my best life. So you can see the whole reason I'm saying all of this is because you can see that there's some truth to what they're saying. There is an issue with stigma with disability. There is an issue with access to employment and education. There are issues with those things, and there are issues with a lot of things, other things that aren't really being touched on here. So, I just want to pay attention to this. In the West, disablement is pretty much only presented or understood in eugenics terms. Capitalism demands it. That means the concept of disability is ingrained into our subconscious as a flaw in a person that needs to be fixed before it poses an existential threat to society. In the same way, many groups of others are often cast as a foil to the safety of the status quo. And once you get othered, well, your humanity pretty much disappears. You become expendable and exploitable. For those of us with disabilities, part of our exploitation includes regularly playing the unwilling star character in lazy, tacky narratives that present disabled people who are just trying to live like you, as paper dolls reduced to a single awe response and one mood. A patronizing mix of contempt and pity that it's not a lot of fun to live on the other end of. And this is true. Um, you do kind of get reduced to your disability by a lot of people, but there there are other ways to deal with that rather than trying to destroy the whole system and force other people to accept a part of you. What you need to understand as a disabled person is that we are not normal, and a disability is a disadvantage no matter what system we live under. Those things are okay because even though the disability is on paper, or it is a disadvantage, my life would be a lot easier if I didn't have to use a wheelchair. My getting my driver's license would have been a whole hell of a lot easier if I didn't need to get a wheelchair van with hand controls. But it's but I did it. I did it, and the disability has also led to me getting some certain other advantages in life. Like, for example, I think that if I didn't have my disability, then maybe I wouldn't be able to think so far out the box like I do now, because part of being disabled for me has been trying to find alternative ways to do stuff because I really don't like depending on other people for help. So when I run into a situation that, maybe like something I can't do myself, or something breaks on my wheelchair or something like that, I don't think, oh, who can I turn to help me with this? I think, okay, how many different solutions are there possibly to this problem? Can I try can I try all these solutions, and then if none of these solutions work, then maybe I'll ask for help if I don't think of anything in the meantime. So the disability, paradoxically, has made me a more independent person because I see people with completely functional limbs. I used to see them at work all the time. They would go straight to the manager as soon as something happened, because they wouldn't have a concept of the idea of, maybe I need to figure this out myself. And this is the thing that we need to like learn more of as disabled people. We need to stop having all these bodies stepping in for us. If you want to see change in your local area, then you need to be the change you want to see. You need to start something in your local area. Don't go to these organizations to get your activism done, because the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to be given their solution, and their solution is not a solution at all. Their solution is just, well, it's basically the final solution. I wanted to go back to this. In the West, disablement is pretty much only presented and or understood in eugenics terms. I did touch on the fact that this is like a eugenics thing, and that's true, but it's not just a Western thing. And I do want to point out that a lot of these communists and like more oppressive regimes, like the ones that you are advocating for, are also eugenicists. So it's not just an American problem. It was a German problem. It was a communist problem. You know, you, by advocating for a more powerful government and someone else to step in to solve your problems for you, are going to lead us down the path of a much more blatant and dark form of eugenics than anything that you could possibly imagine or anything that you could possibly think that you're fighting against now. So, so here we go. That's really about all I needed to touch on here. Everything else, everything I have here is going to be in the relevant link section. So, I'm just going to leave that go for now. But yeah, I really want to stress this to disabled people because sometimes I feel like I am like one of the only people who one of the only disabled people in these like forums and stuff that speaks up against what's happening, and that's why I wanted to take the time to make this video today because I wanted to I want to show disabled people these things, and I'm gonna have more videos coming out about this, even though I've I've, I've been working on it for a little while. It's just they're so emotionally difficult to get through because I realized the implications of this stuff with disability, which is why this video's gotten so long and ranty. And I've got some other things that I want to touch on in a different video at some point. But these are not these are not easy videos to make because I can see how these people here, these people in this Not Your Inspiration project want to talk all day about how disabled people are being exploited by free countries essentially, and they want to talk and they're the ones that are that are exploiting disabled people for what's ultimately going to kill us. It is going to kill us. If you don't wake up and realize the way that you're actually being used by the UN, by um this Not Your Inspiration project to push for something pretty terrible, then I don't know what to tell you. Like it's not gonna be good. What you think you're fighting against now is is a lot better than the alternative they're gonna bring for you. With that being said, that's all I have for you today. But I want to make a quick announcement. Uh, I am considering doing a live stream, like almost like a. I mean, it's not going to be a Bone Broth Friday because it's not Jeff, but um, I want to do something similar just to give you guys a good Friday show. Some of you guys were talking about me possibly doing a live stream or streaming a little bit more often, and I kind of want to do a show on Friday to see how that goes. Uh, I'm thinking I might do it around like 9 p.m. on Friday, depending on how long Jeff's virtual memorial service goes for. Um, so if you guys have anything that you would like me to cover, please send it to me on either Discord if you have a way to reach me on Discord or Twitter. You could just tag me in a tweet. I am at y'all. It's just YALL, no apostrophe. Need number two think. I'm at y'all need to think at Twitter or on Twitter. And my link is in the description below. I've also got an email you could send stuff to me for with so if you come across any propaganda you'd like for me to cover on Friday, I would really appreciate it. I'll try to cover a couple things, and I will be smoking some weed and interacting with the chat at the end. So if you would like to see that, it'll most likely be on Friday, January 1st, at around 9 p.m. And it'll just be me going through some news and then interacting with the chat while a little bit stoned. Sort of similar to what Jeff does, except I don't like alcohol. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you, Jason Hammond, for sending me the first thing that we talked about today. I appreciate it. God bless you guys.